Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the fourth and final Creative Lab Hawaii Music Business panel of this series. My name is Charles Broughtman. I'm a composer-producer here on Hawaii Island, and I've been the director of the Creative Lab Music Immersive and president of the Hawaii Songwriting Festival. I want to take a moment to thank Creative Industries Division of the state of Hawaii for sponsoring this panel and for being so supportive of our music community here in Hawaii. Please keep in touch with the Creative Lab website for upcoming events. And if you're not on the Hawaii Songwriting Festival mailing list, please get on our website and sign up. Today's panel is music and film, TV, and advertising. And we have a panel of some of the most highly respected music supervisors in the United States. Our moderator today is a music supervisor, a film producer, and a board member of the Guild of Music Supervisors. He's also been a staff member with the Creative Lab Music Immersive, as well as the Hawaii Songwriting Festival. So at this point, I am going to hand the keys over to him. And so please welcome our moderator, Jonathan Mchugh. John, take it away.
Well, hello, Charles. Thank you so much. And on behalf of the Guild of Music Supervisor, I thank all you Hawaiian songwriters, producers, music people, for coming and talking to us today. We have put together a very strong, esteemed group for you to talk about what they do and how they do it. And I'm going to give them super quick intros, and then we're going to jump into it. So first, my neighbor, Tracy Mcknight. We go for chicken sandwiches sometime in the hood in Venice. This girl's music supervised a couple films by now, probably like 150, 200,000. I don't even know by now. But she's been around a while. She's been doing it and keeps doing it on a high level. Kind of like Tom Brady, who keeps doing it at a high level, plays for the Tampa Buccaneers, going for another Super Bowl. Tracy just did his series, which you guys haven't seen it, called Man in the Arena, is on ESPN. It's fantastic. Other recent movies, Tall Girl 2, the amazing award-winning documentary Free Solo, another one you have to see, Rescue, another one, Rebel Hearts, which is fantastic. She was the head of Lionsgate Music for years, a few years, where she did a little series you might have heard of called The Hunger Games. So, yeah, she keeps doing it, and we love her. Tracy Mcknight, say hi to our Hawaiian people.
Hello, Hawaiian people.
Ryan Svedson. Is that the right pronunciation, young fella?
Sounded great.
So Ryan, why I love Ryan on this panel also, not only is a big shot head of music at Millennium Media, where his music supervised a bunch of stuff, The Hitman's Bodyguard, starring Ryan Reynolds, Salma Hayek, Till Death, Megan Fox, Jolt, starring Kate Beckinsale, The Protege, starring Michael Keaton. Besides his big shot title, and he used to also work at Lionsgate. He and I met doing marketing on some Lionsgate projects that I did, but also Ryan volunteered to help work for the Guild, which we always loved him for. And also Ryan is an incredible trumpeter, and he has played on some really amazing records, recorded with a wide array of artists, including Little Nas X, on his chart-topping hit Industry Baby, Shawn Mendes, a guy you probably never heard of, Sir Elton John, and Christina Aguilera's Grammy-nominated song Fall in Line featuring Demi Lovato. I'm sure you never heard any of those people. But Ryan has done his thing with all of them. So not only a great supervisor and executive, but a hell of a musician. Speaking of musicians, Elise Schill, formerly a artist on her own right, decided to use her powers for good and help out film and TV songwriters and artists get to know the film and music world, and has been one of the best sync agents in the business for a number of years. And so she looks to pitch, what is the most cool syncable music. And so if you have it, and you can vibe with her, then maybe she can put your stuff in. Who knows? Also, Janet Lopez dropping in unannounced, which we love because she's got a movie called Father of Bride that's heating up. And so we really appreciate her coming in. Janet, again, an amazing supervisor, works for a company called Neophonic, which is one of the best supervision companies in the game. Some of her stuff that I love, Veep, Gilded Age, Utopia. And one thing we'll focus on a little bit today is White Lotus, which was a series that came out, for those of you who haven't seen it, It was a pandemic hit with Steve Zahn, and really cool, well done show produced by Mike White, who's an incredible filmmaker, and used a lot of really interesting Hawaiian music. So we really appreciate her coming on last minute and being able to talk about some of her work on the show. We had Eric Johnson, and I don't see him anymore. So he was coming in from upstate New York, and he's disappeared. Oh, he says, weird connection, having tech issues, restarting. All right, so Eric Johnson will come in, and I will introduce him when he comes in. So just going around the room, obviously, when I was a Grammy trustee, and by the way, Charles, I also just gave up my board seat, and because I'd been on the board, I helped start the Guild probably 12 years ago or so with a number of other folks, longtime veterans. Tracy was the vice president of the Guild, and Janet's partner, supervision partner, I should say, Evian Clean, was one of the co-founders also. So there's a number of us who started, and I've been on the board for a long time, and so I'm no longer a board member because we got to keep getting fresh blood in there. So Andrew Van Forest, one of the best supervisors, also is now a board member. So good on her. So anyway, going around the room, music is music, right? And now there are certain musics I started to say that when I was a Grammy trustee, we used to have our meetings in Maui when times were good, during the salad days of the music business, I should say. And what that allowed us to do is come to Hawaii every year and immerse ourselves in the culture and the music. And much like New Orleans, where I went to school, where I immersed myself in that culture and that music, I've always loved Hawaiian music. And one of the light bulb moments for me was we were staying, my first trip in Hawaii, my wife, tourists, staying at a hotel. And so I asked the concierge, where can I go hear some local music? And he says, well, the hotel down the street has this band tonight called the Sons of Nihihau. And I was like, what's that? He's like, just go. And that, obviously, for those who don't know, was one of the founding members, brother was in that group. And to see that man sing and thinking you're just seeing like a tourist Hawaiian band in a hotel was kind of mesmerizing for me, and really just opened my eyes and made me reach deeper into what is Hawaiian music and the spirit of it and the vibe of it. So cut to years later, as a Grammy trustee, we were able to pass the Hawaiian music category. And that was a real blessing to be able to get that done. And of course, the Grammys shrank a little bit and pulled back, and now have that in the regional roots category, where they fight for New Orleans music, against New Orleans music, and Louisiana Zydeco music for that category. So that's been good for the Hawaiian music culture to have that Grammy category. But obviously, sync is the best thing of all. And obviously, Brother was one of the greatest syncs of all time with his classic cover of What a Wonderful World, which I actually was blessed to put in a movie once. And his stuff was amazing. So we're going to jump back off to introduce Eric, who has conquered his technical difficulties, coming in from upstate New York. How are you, Eric?
I'm good. How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Good, buddy. So Eric Johnson, aka DJ Bunny Ears, is a senior VP and executive integrated music producer at McCann Worldwide. Eric's worked on some of the biggest commercials and brands over the last few decades, and I'm going to drop some names because they're large. And just a few: Nike, Microsoft, MGM, Lockheed, Coke, MasterCard, Verizon, Target, UPS, Budweiser, Reebok, PepsiCo. I'm sure many of you have heard some of those brands. He began his career at the agency Wyden Kennedy, followed by stints at Young and Rubicam, DDB Chicago, and Randall Poster's music supervision search agency. Search Party Music. He's also written and directed music videos for commercials for Nike. He's from Milwaukee, where I met his friend recently when I was screening a movie out there, and currently resides in upstate New York, if that is still your locale. So again, that is our esteemed panelists group, and we are going to just talk about music in general and what we do for a living. So we'll start with Elise, because she's not in the music supervision genre, but she plays one on TV and works with a lot of music supervisors. So Elise, just talk to us about what a sync agent actually does.
Well, a lot of research or have a team doing a whole lot of research. I think that a key part of wanting to connect music or artist music to picture or to content of in any media is to do a whole lot of research on, if it's in TV, obviously, if there's seasons before, you're going to want to really maybe use something like tunefind.com or something that allows you to look into what the supervisor or what kind of music has been, going on, being used, and really get a strong sense of the characters and, really understand each story that you're trying to connect your music to. Because, I know having been an artist when I wasn't thinking that way back many years ago, and like you just see something and you hear of a search and you go, oh, well, that's just like the genre of my music. So I'm just going to go send all this music. That's because we're so similar. And it's so not like that. It's so much more than that. It's so beyond just a genre. It's really understanding the emotion that might be within the characters, or even finding out about what film that you're interested in aligning with, and then really understanding, what's going on in the film and what the vision is really. And you can find that without even talking to anybody. You can just read up a whole lot of things, deadline.com and all these different online places that really can help you. And it's really is mostly about research. And then in terms of connecting your best music, obviously you're going to look at your best music in relation to any given show or film or content.
Thank you. And I think research is super critical. That, again, music supervisors are very hard to get to. They're besieged with labels, publishers, independents, and then let alone people randomly reaching out and trying to pitch the music. So a sync agent is a good place to start, to be able to find a good sync agent, to have a connector. Someone that already knows the music business, knows the supervisors, is super important. But I will say, like Elise said, make sure that you really have researched the shows and the supervisors for the people that you've sent to. So, and going to the level now with Janet. So Janet, on White Lotus, talk about the brief from day one with Mike White of what they wanted and how you look to source local Hawaiian music.
Well, on White Lotus, really, there wasn't a creative brief that was sent. And there wasn't, because when I came to be involved as its music supervisor, it really had already kind of gone through production or was already on the tail end of it, that he was so busy still making the show. And he was in Hawaii and I'm based in Los Angeles, that really there wasn't too much time to interact that way. Fortunately, I had already worked with Mike on another show called Enlightened a few years back, and great series. So I understood his sensibility to a certain degree. And of course I had read the scripts. And what we did to help prepare as much as possible is I stayed in close contact with editorial to help make sure that we had put together an assembly that was going to make sense once he started to look at even early assembly cuts. So I had some sort of initial conversations with editorial, trying to find its sound and kind of get our footing. There had to be respect to Hawaii and be authentic with that, but knowing exactly what songs and where, that was all going to be part of a conversation and process. What we helped to establish early on was the sort of like template of the score to some degree. So I pitched a few names to consider as a composer candidate. And among them was Cristobal, who is an amazing composer.
That's what blew me away.
Yeah, and he had already been an established composer. And so his music was already out there, but I felt like this show had such an odd sense of humor, super genuine, but you're laughing at things that shouldn't be funny, and all very well done. So the personalities between the two, I think, was also very interesting, that dynamic in filmmaking. So wonderful, like it was great because I pitched a few people. Christo's music stood out to Mike, and they had a meeting and he became our composer, which was a really, really smart setup for this show's sonic palette out the gate. And I had given them music that was authentic music, but that also was mindful of our budget. That happens a lot as part of like the research that Elise was saying as well, is that it's not all just about the creative sort of like, needs of the show. Part of it is also being within the parameter of what that show can afford. It's just the practical nature of what we do. So I made sure to kind of set up editorial with songs that would, if they found a place, could stay and remain. And all of those songs, even though a lot of them were initially very early production library selections, were authentic production library selections, meaning they were by Hawaiian writers and composers. So it's wonderful. Really, in some cases, we were able to use like 7 or so drops from really great moments that are in the background. I think one of the things in White Lotus is that there is no cue. We talked about this before, John. There isn't really a cue where a song comes in because someone turns on a radio. The song just sort of appears. And there's this really sort of like beautiful atmospheric quality to a sense of reminding of where you are. So being authentic to that and always approaching, I hope anyway, that we did this, is approach the music that we were interested in having in our show with a lot of respect for the culture and with aloha as part of our like honor to be able to even have an opportunity to come to you with, a use. So I hope that it was well received.
Yeah, the show really worked for me on a lot of levels. Obviously, Cristobal's stuff was incredible. And, the use of Hawaiian music is just, it's a powerful, powerful thing whenever I see kind of the traditional Hawaiian music. And I know there are many songwriters and writers on here that don't just make Hawaiian music. There's so many different types of music that people are making. And as far as the, let's keep going. I'll come back. So Eric, on your side, you've done spots from some of the top brands in the world, looking for all types of different music. What's your search process like in finding music when you get a brief? And also another thing is the magic of the agency world and how tough it is to get good ideas sold, so to speak, musically. So actually just tell us a little bit about the process. And what's also interesting is another thing we talk about is the music producer title versus the music supervisor title, whereas the music producer title has been a part of advertising for decades. And so even though you may perform music supervisor roles, you may do some physical production yourself on the music, but you may play a lot of music supervision roles. So can you talk about that title and what you do on a daily?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody, by the way. Nice to see you all. Apologies, I was a bit late. I was having some tech issues. Yeah, as far as I can tell, and I've been doing this now for 22 years, which is wild to think about. And I fell into it at Wieden & Kennedy, being just a punk art DJ running the college radio station. As far as I can tell, the music producer role is just like a nomenclature thing, right? Like music producer, and by all effects, and anyone here, fellow panelists, correct me otherwise, it seems like we probably play a similar role. Like I'm basically part-time music supervisor, and the producer aspect would be when I'm commissioning musicians or music houses to create original music or scores or anything. I think it's basically, as far as I can tell, it's basically the same thing, just from the agency side, and that's the preferred way to call that title. So that's really that, as far as I can tell. But half my day is music supervision, half my day is music production in simplest terms. But I think as far as like the creative process, I think it's drinking from a fire hose, I think, is sometimes the way that might go. But, it's really fun. I still totally love what I do, and it's really interesting. And each day is unique, as today was also unique. And the things I get to work on is really fun. So there's the diversity in the ideas that we're seeking to create or seeking to collaborate with I have always shown this really like multifaceted, very dynamic, and very diverse creative aspect of what I do, and I love that. So it's nice to come to work every day and kind of get to play with all the tools in the toolkit, so to speak, and sometimes make tools. So
the process, right? You work for the agency, so the agency has a client, and the client, Pepsi or whatever, says, "Hey, we're going to do a spot goes like this, and we're thinking about music that's like this," and then you come in and then talk about how the next begins.
Yeah, and it's my music department falls in the production department. We're producers, so usually by the time a job comes to me, it's going to be made. Sometimes I'm pulled into strategy and creative concepting, and that's also a fun thing. But I'll just speak to the production aspect of it. So our clients these days, the big ones are Verizon, MasterCard, Microsoft, et cetera, L'Oreal. By the time my creative team comes to me with our producer on it, they'll have the idea sold through and in theory, some parameters around it. We're often pulled in early to conversations to understand the creative asks, as well as the sort of parameters on the project overall, the scope of work, the budget, the timeline, those kinds of needs, and then try to figure out what we're going to do. We get to help guide ideas around, are we looking to license something? Are we looking to create a brand new piece of music, a score, a cover, whatever it might be? And when we do, our music supervision stuff, we source music in probably a similar way that all the fellow panelists do, which is our trusted sources, going down rabbit holes, just listening to tons of stuff. For the original music, we have music houses that we often work with, get to work with famous composers sometimes. I got to work with Nicholas Breitel before he did all the more recent stuff, and it was sort of coming off of anyway, he was coming off just a film, and he was right before another film, and I caught him at a great time and got to work with him. So it's sometimes working with
he just did the DiCaprio film, Don't Look Up.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it was a little previous to that too, and he did that as well. So that's kind of what my day looks like. The shaping music question. I really love when my creatives come to us early, and we're also very proactive in the way we are in an in-house department. I know I've been now at McCann for over 7.5 years, so I know a lot of our people that are all my coworkers, and I proactively go and make sure I'm on top of sort of what's coming down the line to get done, because I like to be proactive in making sure like I'm giving people good ideas and good options, because I think the earlier you can get onto an idea, the better. But that's sort of what our day-to-day looks like, I suppose. Sorry if I'm a bit rambly. It's the end of my day here. It's a long day.
Yeah, thanks for staying up late with us.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. So Tracy, you've been an independent music supervisor for years, except for your stint running the music at a big studio like Lionsgate. So just talk a little bit about the differences in those two capacities, so that give people an idea of the scope of work of both, if you wouldn't mind.
In a nutshell, I think the best way to put it is, I think when you work at a studio, I think you do more things by committee. I just think there's a lot more voices, there's a lot more opinions, there's a lot more focus, just how movies are made when you're inside a studio system. I think that, for at least for my time, I think sometimes there's a little less risk. I think sometimes there's something about like an insurance policy, if you will, whether it's an actor or someone in music, but they cast movies who's bankable, who's going to be bankable somewhere, how are things going to move. And I think that, coming from the New York indie world and then moving into a studio was definitely a different experience of all the different factors that go into making decisions. Where in independent film, you're a tribe, and you're kind of a small tribe, and the circle of decision makers is much smaller. And I've seen that allows for a little bit more creativity and a little bit more risk. And I can understand both sides of it. So I think with, for example, being at a studio on a $30 million movie, and you wanted to use a first-time composer, that's a sell internally, right? But if you're on an indie film and that director has a relationship with the first-time composer, our job is to help navigate and help the composer do their best work. So that's just like some of the differences. But at the end of the day, it's all about telling the story. And I think everybody wants to make the best movie and tell the best story.
Thanks. And I think also you brought up composers, and I think that's something that's important to know, that supervisors, much like Janet was talking about pitching Cristobal, and Tricia and I are working on a movie and we're pitching composers to the director. For the people out there that are trying to not just be songwriters and producers, but are trying to score, it's an amazing way to make a living if you have the talent and the aptitude and the passion and desire for it. And people are right now looking for composers of all different walks of life with different visions. So, if it's something you love to do, create instrumental music, make sure you're putting together a reel, and make sure you're trying to find, whether it's student films or shorts, to score and learn that part of the process to get your creative juices out there, and show that you have been able to score things. Because Tracy and I just hired a young African-American composer straight out of the Sundance Lab for an education documentary. And it's nice to work with young people. A lot of what we love to do is educate and mentor. So I think that's something I just wanted to mention also. So Ryan, who is hiring composers on films and doing films with big stars, talk about your game and how you look for music and or new composers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I could start on the composer front. As Tracy was mentioning, sometimes directors have a preference in who they've worked with. And we've seen this historically in so many films, the relationship with directors and composers, and they seem to stick with them. And the reason why is because it's such a strong bond. And if you have one hit after another, you want to keep that routine going, and who you're working with is really dependable. Same goes with any relationship with anyone, and with music supervisors. Some get hired with the same director because they know they have a great taste in music. They've built that friendship, and that's how the ball keeps rolling. So it's really important, especially with whatever stage you're at, to get in with some upcoming directors, because never know where they're going to take off. And that's where a lot of composers get their start. But on my front, sometimes we'll get a director on board who has no clue on who they want music-wise or where the music should go at all within the film. And it's my job to present the best candidates in front of them. I usually get reels of composers from agencies, composer agencies. There's about a dozen top ones out there that represent, I would say, over 90% of the leading composers in Hollywood. And they have them all. The agent's primary purpose is to, first of all, represent their client, but also have their reel ready, know their scheduling, and then be able to negotiate their rate for the project. And then when it comes to the music side, for being a music supervisor, I analyze the script, see what music would be most appropriate, and then start sourcing it and finding the different libraries and all the people that represent the music, so that the picture could be best enhanced through the sound in areas where otherwise it might not have been. And I could give one quick example of that. So in Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, there's a scene where Ryan Reynolds' head gets shoved into a jukebox, and it changes the song every time it does. And so each song plays for about 5 seconds. And it's a comedic scene because it's kind of like that old school that you see in comics where the song changes every time, but you only have about 3 seconds of the song playing to really create an effect. So it had to be like a well-known song. I couldn't use production music. And I floated the idea of using Rebecca Black's Friday past the director. And he's like, what's that? He had no idea about the cultural relevance, how that song went viral for all the wrong reasons. And one of the things of being a music supervisor is having your ear to the ground and knowing these trends and knowing these pulses and knowing what could make the whole other, the world laugh when they see it because of the cultural relevance, whereas he was in the dark on that trend. So that's just one of the examples where a music supervisor and their specialty and knowing, the most innovative and best music to put forward for a scene will really help enhance it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. So now we're going to do the advice part of the time section. So Elise, what advice would you give to artists and producers who are trying to get their music out there in the world? And obviously, besides the research we talked about, other things they should be doing, whether it's, making sure metadata is together, talk about the little bit of nuts and bolts on the game.
Nuts and bolts. Yeah, I think if there's a difference between if you're going at it as an artist or as a songwriter or as a composer, obviously. But if you're coming at people as an artist, it would really be good to, if you're, defining yourself in a certain kind of production style or genre, and this is on a real 101 level, is to really have your sonics, your production in a real, high level. And that means even if it's a lo-fi project, that it is really sounds amazing and evocative, and really want to go after emotion all the time, or evoking emotion. And that's, I talk a lot to composers that I work with, and we talk a lot when we're even looking just at doing trailers or, promos, and we talk a lot about every second of music is another opportunity to enhance the emotion or, minimize it to enhance it, so I think it's just really important to make sure that once you have the song the way you want it, and whether that is as you're working on your production or not, that the production is also top notch and ready to be heard by,
And Jen, how did you source music for White Lotus, and what advice would you give people trying to connect? Because obviously we just can't respond to all the emails we get and all the pitches we get from people that, we don't have connection with. So, give advice, tell us a little bit about how you found that Hawaiian music and what your advice might be.
Sorry, I was muted. On White Lotus, there were certain songs that we pursued that were very close to Mike White's heart. He had a certain he had access to a record by the Rose Ensemble that really is a great band and very, very beautifully and delicately recorded these songs, much to Elise's point, where there was a lot of sort of attention paid to the execution of some of these songs. Those stood out right away to Mike. And we started there. If you've ever worked with someone who's just as wonderful and brilliant as him, you help support his vision. There's no need for me to change his mind on something, particularly if it's incredible and working. It might be hard for me to get and work within my parameters or whatever, but that's not going to stop me from trying. So that was our main source. Our muse is to work off of these songs that were kind of impacting with him. And then there were times where we had to find ways to, again, be sort of more mindful of the budget. And we turned to alliances we have with a lot of production companies, production libraries that really were putting out music by authentic Hawaiian artists, composers, and songwriters out of Hawaii.
Who are some of the best ones you found?
Kapono, who's part of the Beamer family, I believe, who reached out, was very, very kind and wanted to say hello with regards to White Lotus. And I think we had 5 episodes, multiple songs an episode that were credited to him through those agencies. So it was wise of him to make those sort of alliances early on, because it helped really put out a lot of really incredible, authentic music and put it at our fingertips. There was also times where we found ourselves sort of going back to partnerships that we had made, Hula Records, Chord International, that were helpful in helping us go after songs that were sometimes having a repetitive use or multiple uses. in one episode, or you sort of work thematically and come back in another episode. So there was just a lot of heart, I think, after pursuing these songs. And that was sort of the goal. A lot of the other parts were even where, if you guys watch White Lotus, you'll notice that there's like all these vocalizations that kind of come in and out. A lot of them were Cristobal, our composer, and him experimenting with sounds and flutes and different sort of like just vocalizations. And so when that goes away and a song comes in, it works in tandem and maybe even along the same key. So I think Mike White, his writing, his script was really at the source of why we were searching for music on this show. It didn't always need it. It was like, how do we give Mike what he wants? Advice I would give, though, which I feel is a very practical question, is particularly on a show like White Lotus, on any shows I've worked on, is if you're going to try to satisfy a brief, and let's say it's a contemporary project, it takes place out of an island, don't try to be that if you're not that. If that's not genuinely the kind of music you make, don't try to replicate something because you're hoping for a sync. I hear the need to want to do that, and it's tempting. And if you're expanding and you want to like branch out and experiment with different sound, then there's no reason to limit yourself. But if you feel that that's not genuinely who you are and that's just not the wheelhouse you're comfortable in, don't try to pose as one that is. And I think it's felt like even when you receive a submission, you can just sort of sense that it's not like coming from the authentic place.
Yeah, I think the supervisors in general respond to authenticity, and that's the most important thing for us, because if we're pitching it, we have to really firmly believe in it, and the music has to translate that. Eric, on your end, obviously you work on some of the biggest brands, and you're on this call. I would think you probably have the most money to pay musicians than anybody, because commercials and trailers are probably two of the biggest forms of being able to actually pay for things. Because if a product doesn't work and a movie doesn't open, everybody gets blamed in the marketing world. So obviously having commercials that work and really capture people are super important. And obviously the right pieces of music can make me stop that constant fast forward through commercials that I do. And if I hear something good, I'm like, whoa, what is that? And then I put up Shazam and, I find that piece of music and I absorb it. So talk about what you think for artists out there who want to get their songs in TV commercials, movies, whatever. What are some thoughts and stories you might have come up with where you have found an artist that, from somewhere, and, just ideas and things like that for people?
Sure. I have a funny little anecdote about getting people paid. I spoke at Iceland Airwaves a few years back, which is in Reykjavik, amazing festival and conference. I would recommend it to anyone that if you get a chance to go. I was there on a panel with Mary Ramos, who's Quentin Tarantino's supervisor, lovely human being. And after our panel, sort of lines formed for each of us, but mostly for her. And right away, she said something very funny to me and to the audience. She said, "Hey, listen, that's awesome. You want to see me, but if you actually want to get paid, go speak to Eric." And I got what she was saying. She was trying to be funny, which is so Mary of her, but she was also being really pragmatic, which is, and I can't speak to people's budgets, but overall, I work on pretty decent budgets, and that changes all the time. You never know what you're going to get, but by and large, working with pretty healthy budgets, and I love that I get to get people paid. I love that I get to collaborate with artists, because I think first and foremost, and this sort of maybe goes back to Janet's point a little bit too, which is and probably most panelists here would say, we love music. My guess is all of us here love music, and so we want to also love the music you're making. So if you love the music you're making, that authenticity we're going to feel. So I get to get people paid that are giving me their music, and we get to collaborate, and it serves the needs of the client. So the way I'm trying to think of what advice I might have. I think it's sort of reiterating what Janet's saying a bit too, which is I kind of feel like you could game the system probably in some ways, write a bunch of songs about sunshine and tomorrow and togetherness and a bazillion things like this, and it might work. but I feel like that wouldn't translate in this authenticity thing. And I feel like in the end, it won't serve your purpose, because I kind of feel like as a musician, you're writing from this place of like creative, like just a real deep creative purity. And you have a muse, and that muse isn't to write to the parameters of the needs of what I need. I get to do that in my role, and we get to do that in a role that we get to translate it. So I almost feel like I wanted to always go back to basics, like make music you love and are stoked about, and, you know, get into your local scene and get down with others and hustle your butt off and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's going to, and then do some very pragmatic things about other things that we've listed here. And I think try to get in touch with third party, sync companies that pitch to us, because that'll help. Because it really is like every day I get 200 emails easily on top of all the other stuff I have to deal with. And it's a lot. So I think some pragmatic steps, but it's almost back to basics a little bit, like make music that you're super stoked about, whatever that is. And I don't know, is that too basic?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's good. And Tracy, you've done a lot of independent projects, and you found a lot of great independent music. And part of what Eric was saying is correct, that we love discovering music. We love trying to get people paid. And if we can't get them paid well, at least we get them a placement. And that's part of what everybody on this call loves doing. So talk about your process in discovering new music. And you know when you're looking for it, what you're looking for when you're looking. But just talk about overall your process in digesting new music and finding independent stuff.
Oh, I think I'm probably doing what everyone else is doing, but I always take a happy ride over at Bandcamp, and I'm also like, over on, Spotify, because it's, the search engines are really great, and they reach far and wide. My trusted group of, musical collaborators that I reach out to, I think it comes from all different sources, and a lot of it is depending on what your creative is. I'm doing Ray Romano's film right now. He's directing a film, which is super funny, and it's about his big Italian family. So and it's a lot of his so Luna Mezzamar, and going and like finding out I'm looking up like Italian cover bands to find, because they're a big funny family, and they have a lot of these parties, and so it kind of gives you this birth and this outreach to be able to also be creative. And but that's how I do it. And a lot of it is by chance, right? Don't we all, I've been in taxi cabs, and I've found music for films. It comes from all different places. But I love that we get to have all these different palettes that we work with. And I think the best part for me is that I wish I'm not a musicologist, but I love when I get a film that's about sports, and I have to jump in and do this deep dive, which maybe I know I look like an NFL expert, but I'm not. And I love it. I get to go on this exploration, and in turn, I get to bring opportunities to other people, which I like a lot. It's a great part of the job. There's nothing better than finding or discovering something and making that phone call and saying, you got a placement. It's really, it never gets old. And just on the advice front, I think that you guys really have covered it, and about being your authentic self, which truly comes through, and I think we've all said it already, but I think you should know your audience. I think it's really important, if you're sending an email to me, or you want to get in touch with me or Eric or Janet, it's like, hey, Tracy, what's going on? Here's my list, that you kind of have to have it's easy to find information about us or about our projects, and to see what we do, or something that you connected with. That when you think about, I always think about, if I were writing a song, it's about art and your creative process, and that it's a topic that you believe in. But there has to be a mutual discussion, and I just encourage that, because there are no rules. There is talent that meets luck, meets opportunity, and it comes in all different shapes and sizes. There's no rule book, so you have to throw that out. But it is a boot camp, and you got to really love it, because we're all slogging it out too. And but so if it's your dream to be that songwriter, I say don't let it go, but you got to keep fighting the good fight. because we know we all walked into a room. Everyone here knows, like when you start music supervising, there might be 5 other supervisors up for a gig. Like, we get it, but you have to believe in yourself and really believe that this is what you want, and you're going to get it because you've worked hard and you've got something to say. So I would just keep that close. And thanks for having me. It's fun to be somewhat in Hawaii.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was just thinking about it. I was in Hawaii in June, and in March, last year, I'm saying, right? And so I was looking for a track. I did this TV show called The Freak Brothers with John Goodman and Tiffany Haddish, and Schoolboy Q was in it. Just really funny animated show. Pete Davidson. Anyway, so I was trying to create this track, and it wasn't working. And then I was talking to a producer looking for ideas, and he played me a track, and it was great. And I was like, "Who's that guy rapping?" He goes, "Well, he's this kid from Honolulu. He's a young rapper named Ark Woods." And I was like, "Do you think he'd be cool with like letting me strip those vocals out, use the track, bring in the producers because it's comedy, so they're writing wacky stuff on it, and give him some wacky words to sing that fit the scene?" And he was amazing about it. The kid was amazing. He came in, did it while his sister was very sick, and did it at his sister's place and knocked it out. And then I was able to, a month later, I just happened to be going to Hawaii, and I was able to buy the guy a drink in Honolulu. So that was like a nice thing that happened recently, but random. You just never know how these random things go. Ryan, on your end, now that you're doing big studio, well, I wouldn't say big studio, but more of a corporate studio entity, so to speak.
It's okay to say that it's big. It's fine. It's okay.
So do you have how are you sourcing new music these days in your job differently than your old job?
Yeah, well, at my old job, I never had the opportunity to be a music supervisor. I was working more on the marketing and publicity side of music. So when I jumped into Millennium, I had an idea of what music supervision was and what it entailed, but I had none of the connections. So the first thing I had to do was to establish connections with all these major publishers and labels and get on their mailing lists. So they do a fantastic job in sending out blasts, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, of the latest trending music and the best people to contact in their organizations to reach out to for quotes and to clear the music. So I really had to get on all their radars first, because they're the ones that are pitching out what's priorities for them and upcoming artists, and they'll keep us in the loop and help make our job a little bit easier. And it's important for everyone to understand that sync is often a supplementary income for artists. It's not the primary income. So especially on the studio side, when I receive music, sometimes I can't, and I'm not allowed to listen to unsolicited material. So that's why it's really important for it to go through these third parties or through publishers or through sync agents who already have these connections directly with music supervisors, because they know that they're trusted sources. They know that they're going to know where the complete ownership of the song is. They're going to know that there's no samples within the song. I'll give a great example. I'm working on a smaller film, and the director had a specific song that he wanted, hip hop song. I reached out to their team. I was able to find half of the song, but they have no idea who owns the other half. And it's like the wheels are turning. We got to get this film locked in. It was a perfect opportunity, because rarely does the director get to actually secure and go with a certain song. And we just couldn't find it. We couldn't secure it. And so it's really important to have all your metadata ownership, all your bases covered when it comes to this stuff, because we work fast paced. And the thing is, there's a billion songs out there. So if yours isn't lining up, unfortunately, we have to move on and keep the train going as a music supervisor.
Yeah, you really have to have it together. When you get that call, that's why it's always great to have someone like a sync agent. But you could act as your own sync agent in the sense that, let's say there are 4 co-writers and they're not in one group and you don't see them all the time. You need to be able to make sure that they sign a piece of paper and saying, hey, if I pitch this song, you'll get a quarter of whatever I get or whatever. But I can't have to track you down if you're on an outrigger and on the way to on the way to the Philippines or something, we can't find you, or anywhere. People are just spread out all over the world sometimes, especially today. Like Eric Johnson should be in his office in New York, but no, he's in snowy upstate New York.
That's
Um,
right.
so I think it's really important that everybody acts as their own sync agent. And if you have collaborators, you take courses like this and be on panels like this to learn more, to be one step ahead of your collaborators so that you can be out front and you can be giving the good advice that the folks at Creative Industries and Creative Labs are always pushing you to do. But we're here to tell you it really matters. Like, you have to have yourself, all your music buttoned up and tightened up.
I would just add that, don't ever send out a piece of music that you haven't figured out your splits with your co-writers. That's just going to be a nightmare for everybody. So you have to know who's written, and you have to agree to everything before you send anything out. And you should register it. You have to register it, and with your PRO, and get all that business stuff taken care of before you send it out to anyone.
And so if anybody has any questions, we have about 10 minutes left. We have, again, an amazing group of people, and I want to thank you all for participating in this panel. So I think that, one of the most important things for, here we go, some composers popped in. Music producer, record label owner, want to know how to get the music I represent in front of music supervisors. We get that question once or twice. And I think we covered some of that, Daniel, in the sense that, you have to build your own relationships. So if you want to go on vacation, come to LA, set up some meetings with some people, build some relationships. But obviously having that sync agent is super vital. So Kenneth, composers are at disadvantage of not knowing the scene or the flavor of the necessary tempo. How does one know how to pitch any kind of emotions? I think Tracy and I were just talking about that today, about new composers figuring out the landscape of what a score is supposed to be. And I think it's kind of a trial and error, but Tracy, if you want to jump in on, how it's kind of a nebulous thing, right? What score is and how it works, right? It's like, and it could be totally different to you and me. And it's just, music's very subjective to picture, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, on the project we're working on, we're just trying to give our composer a lot of latitude. But, as a composer, you're there as a storyteller as well. So you have to be connected to the material and being able to navigate this. This is a documentary. So we have some talking heads, but we have the subject matter is about the disparities in the public school system in the United States. It's a really important documentary. We're honored to be working on it. But there's a lot of information and how to navigate those roads. And that's the skill set of a composer. And we're there to help guide. So we're just getting started. But no doubt, Jonathan and I will be putting in our 2 cents shortly.
And I don't want to pronounce his name badly, but I'm going to go with Tamaine Gardner had a really good question. As an artist, which third parties are best to pitch our music, our music for artists? But the second half of the question is, what does that email look like or include? Like, how do you catch a supervisor's eye of the 200 emails they're getting per day? And my first answer is connection, right? Research and connection. And that means, hey, Jonathan Mchugh, Jonathan, I saw your show Blind Spotting. I love the way you used San Francisco Bay Area hip hop and R&B. And I actually have some of that stuff from the period that you're looking for, because it was a period piece. And so that makes me take an extra look and might even go to listen to it, right? Because now you've brought your research, you've done a little work, and you find that you think you have connection. It's for me to listen and see, yeah, that stuff actually does work. It is the right period. It's the right vibe, So does anybody ever have a story that they want to throw out of a connection that came as a random email that turned into something? Any of our panelists?
I can't think of a specific example, but I can say that one of the things that stand out to me about what you said and emails that I receive is, I love it when someone does the research and knows who I am. I love it even more when someone represents themselves professionally. So if their emails informative, short, to the point, like tell me about why you made the song or what it is or whatever. And it doesn't have to you don't have to give me intimate personal details, because I respect the fact that there's, privacy and and you don't have to disclose everything, but you do relate to why this song exists. And then you share with me as a professional, this song has never been synced. I look forward to syncing it. It was recorded by me in the studio. I represent the master 100% and the publishing 100%, or I have a co-write, and they, I represent on both of our writer share. Like, it's communicating to me that you are a professional and can represent your music in a film for TV forum. And I really, really appreciate that level of professionalism that comes through in an email. Like, I love that they know my name and my projects. And I really, really respect that someone's taken the time to research that. I also really value the people that value themselves and know how to speak professionally in an email. It goes a long way, and it helps to make me feel more confident in starting a relationship with someone that, I didn't otherwise know. So,
and the other thing,
if I could add to that, I think it's a great point, but also I think we get a lot of emails and they're 6 paragraphs long. And then when you open up the link, there's 25 songs. And so it becomes overwhelming. So I think for me, it's like putting your best foot forward. Here's my top 3 or my top 2, or here's my crown jewel, however you want to put it. But when you start to get all the way to the bottom, and then there's an Instagram and a Twitter and a thing and a stuff, and I just, like, my brain goes into like severe, I was like, I can't, it's by the time you get to the bottom, it's like, and and I eat cheese or whatever, it's like, it's too much.
Yeah, you really have to be succinct with your pitch, researched, well-heeled. And the other thing I forgot to say is, like, if you have a hard drive full of music sitting at your house, which everybody does, put it up. Like, put up Spotify, put up YouTube, put up any covers you do on YouTube, because we will sometimes fish for covers and find random stuff out there. And I've used it before. I found stuff on YouTube of a cover. So get your stuff up there. Put it out there in the world. Don't be shy about it. Don't wait for perfection to come, because we can't find it in the matrix of the mousetrap of finding things that, the ether, unless it's up there. So that's one thing. We have a couple more. I like this Dave Friedman question. If a song, where'd it go? If a song is pitched for sync, will the supervisor give the songwriter an opportunity to change lyrics if the music and mood are perfect, but the lyrics could fit the sync better? Well, I gave you that example a minute ago, because I had a great beat, that great vibe, and I asked the guy, look, man, I don't want to mess with your music, but I need you to really sing these lyrics. Like, let me use your beat, be the singer on it, and you'll get a sync. And he was like, no problem, dude, I'm in. And so that can-do attitude was exactly what we need, because if we like something but need it to be, and we have the time, right? Janet mentioned how, or somebody mentioned how fast things are moving, that if we have the time to be able to stretch it out and change it and add something to it, if you can go back and do it, we'll give you that time, because we want it to be the best possible representation it can be before we pitch it to the director and producer. Let's go. Last one, maybe. Let's see. If you are a writer, artist, composer, are there any other pieces of advice for the individual varying roles other than being authentic in my art and addressing a project that inspires me personally? For me, making connection. Like, these things that do, when I came to Hawaii, I met a bunch of songwriters. I kept in touch with a couple of them, and I thought a couple of them would be better in keeping in touch with me, because I am that kind of person. If I build a relationship with you, I meet you, I have a cocktail with you, whatever, I like you, you like me, but I can't necessarily spend the time and energy to reach out to you all the time. But if you reach out to me, I'm always going to reciprocate. I'm always going to listen to a song once you have the relationship. And I think because we love discovery and we love artists and we relish the fact that if we can get somebody paid, and there's Chase. I was thinking about Chase, exactly. And Chase said, I once took Jonathan to a waterfall with Chris Mollaire. And actually, I did get hurt, bro. I almost got hurt. And this guy, Chase, is a crazy story. So we walked, we're on the ocean, and there's a waterfall, which looks very close, but it's like a mile away. And I had some really terrible shoes that were turned out to be paper by the end. And I literally had to walk across these rocks, and I kept saying, I want to get to this waterfall. I want to get to this waterfall. Meanwhile, the tide's coming in, and it's almost going to be impassable to get back. We're going to have to like jump in the water and swim to the rocks, and it's going to get complicated. And Chase literally bodied me up as we had to cross over this water pass, which was getting kind of gnarly. So Chase, man, mahalo to you, brother, for doing that. So again, that's a thing I'll never forget. And Chase and I have not kept in touch, but the idea of that thing. So Charles, when we have the ability to get together again and bring some supervisors back out, those relationships are invaluable and can last a lifetime. So I hope that we're able to get out there and visit with you all again. Any last thoughts from anybody, panelists, about the process? Because we're kind of going into overtime. Or Charles, anything I might have missed?
I mean, I think what you were just saying, it's like we like to get down with people. We like to know people. I think be kind, hustle, connect, learn stuff, like just be endlessly curious. Like if, this, I think anything you do in life that you want to be great at, like it's no joke. If you really love something, you're going to go for it. And these are good people to know. And I think we've tried to give some practical things, but a lot of it is just like honing your craft and all the old school, stuff. That's it. And that's what you're stoked about in the first place, I would think, right?
Yeah, I think the other thing is just collaborate with each other. Like do records that, don't stay in your lane, like jump into other people's lanes and do collaborate with different people and make different music and use other people's connections and contacts and share your own, because it is a real community. That's why I love Hawaii and I love New Orleans and I love the Zydeco community in Louisiana. Like these regional forms of music are just unbelievable to me anyway. And I think a lot of us share the same feeling for special music, because you know why? Because we can feel the authenticity and the passion that community and that music gets put out there. So I think continue to work together. Charles, anything I missed?
Yeah, well, I think that's, I think that's the key to the whole thing is the community. And of course, that's what we're trying to build here with Creative Lab and the Hawaii Songwriting Festival. And I think we're on our way. We've got a really nice group of a couple of hundred writers here in Hawaii that are working together and sharing contacts and co-writing. And so, yeah, I think you're spot on with that. And also, I love that everybody is always coming back to the authenticity and the music part of it. That we're always talking about business, but that authenticity and really the creative part of it is the most important thing. Without it, there isn't anything else really. So I think that's an important point as well.
Charles, you're going to
also.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with you, Charles. I think that there is, like, music comes naturally to some people, and I think very much the spirit in Hawaii and the people that are making music in Hawaii, it is unlike anything else, and extremely beautiful and special and sacred. And I think that anyone who steps up and starts to make music there is doing it for very good reason. So I think that, terms like aloha and mahalo really do speak when you hear music of Hawaii. So much mahalo. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, Charles, you're going to try to do the festival again later on this year?
Yeah. Well, we've almost committed a few times now, and then every time there seems to be another COVID.
Yeah. Welcome to the club.
But we're working on it and hope to do this live and in person the next time. So
for those who none of you made it last time, but it was really an inspiring event to be able to work with artists. And the concept, for those who don't know, is basically Charles brings together songwriters, producers, artists, and literally has them collaborate. We give briefs. Supervisors show up, give a brief. And then they put people in hotel rooms together, and they bring their portable keyboards and they make music. And I actually had one song that actually made it in the first cut of a movie, never finished it, but never got in, but it was like, it got tempted and it was great. So I think the experience was really beautiful, and putting people together like that. So hopefully, Charles, you can do that, and we can bring some supervisors out from the guild, and make it, the great experience that I had when I was there.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to doing it again. Well, with that, I think maybe we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much to our panelists for giving their time and their energy to our music community here. Would like to also once again thank the Creative Lab Hawaii and Creative Industries Division of the state of Hawaii for being so supportive of the music community here.
I wish we had people on the mainland that were as supportive as you guys are. So definitely mahalo to you guys.
Yeah. And so I also just wanted to comment that I think you are all guild members, but there is a guild membership where you don't have to be a music supervisor.
Thank you. Forgot about that plug.
You want to talk about that just a little bit before we?
Thing we started a number of years ago, and it's for basically anybody working in the industry at all. But basically what it is $100 a year, so it's not a lot of money. You get our monthly newsletter, plus you get invited to our panel series. We have a panel coming up about getting jobs in music supervision. During the pandemic, I personally did about 10 to 15 panels. We did one every week, it seemed like. And it was amazing because it really was able to bring our community together. And that's not just supervisors, that's songwriters, producers, artists, everybody. So join up, go to the guildofmusicsupervisors.com and look up Friends of the Guild. And really, it's really worth the money. And again, we're a nonprofit. So it basically just connects you to us. And that will help you speak the language a little bit about supervisors, what we do, how we do, and get you more knowledge about what's going on. We're also going to be doing a thing, Eric, you don't even know this, with the Clios. The Clios are a big advertising award show out of New York where we're going to be profiling an advertising supervisor every month to start. So the Clios are another interesting thing that's, we're building these strategic relationships and partnerships with other outfits to continue to push the work of music supervisors. I mean, years ago we had nothing, and then we had Grammy voting, and then we had Emmy voting, and then we had a Grammy category, and now we have a Emmy category. Someday, hopefully, we'll have an Oscar category. We're talking to the Spirit Awards about doing stuff with them. So we're lobbying on behalf of our people to continue to spread the word about music supervisors, because I don't know if people know this, but it's not really a well-paid gig. I mean, the corporate gigs pay a little better than the independent supervision gig, shall we say. And I think Tracy can attest to that one when she was a corporate warrior. But we love what we do, and we're passionate about it, as you can tell, and we love finding people's music and getting it into projects. So let's continue to do that. Charles, let's do more of these, and hopefully we'll get to see some of you in person later in the year.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan. And with that, we'll say aloha.